Do you hear that? Out in the distance? The screams of a beast? What could that be? Imagine yourself on an island in the middle of the sea. You don't really know where you are, but you hear screams, shrieks. Is it a man? Is it a beast? You don't know. That's something we're exploring tonight in a very creepy and disturbing film titled Island of Lost Souls, and it came out in 1932. It's classified as a sci-fi horror film. Now, it's based on the H.G. Wells book, The Island of Dr. Moreau, which I read probably 8 years ago, and I remember it's probably the creepiest and most disturbing book that I've ever read. I didn't know anything about it before I read it, but I just remembered it's the only book that's ever made my heart beat kind of fast because there's a lot of build-up in it. So The Island of Dr. Moreau. Well, the movie Island of Lost Souls pretty much takes the story straight from the book. There are some differences, of course. Obviously, the title has changed a little bit, but Dr. Moreau is in the film, played by Charles Laughton. Bela Lugosi has a very small role in the film. He plays one of the creatures, and he is the sayer of the law creature. He's the creature that pretty much keeps everyone in line, saying, "What is the law?" Telling all the animals to keep repeating the law of the island. And he was cast last minute. He was bankrupt at the time, so they made him some type of wolf or hog man. Very hairy face, so keep an eye out for Bela Lugosi. Richard Arlen, I don't know much about him, but he plays the protagonist. In the book, he is the writer of the diary, so he's the main character in the book. And Kathleen Burke, she plays the Panther woman in the story, and she had never been in any other film before. Paramount, the company who made the film, they wanted to do this. They wanted to use a female that had never been in any movie before, and they actually held a contest to find who would play the Panther woman, and about 60,000 women auditioned to be the Panther woman in this film, and she ended up winning. Personally, I think she looks a lot like Marion Cotillard, the French actress who is currently acting. But Charles Laughton, this was actually his second film to star in Hollywood in the US. And Charles Laughton, he plays Dr. Moreau. The story is, I'll give a brief plot of the film, is that the protagonist, played by Richard Arlen, he's shipwrecked. He's picked up by a ship that is carrying animals to a remote island. So they pick him up, they help him out, and he ends up being left on the island. And Charles Laughton, Dr. Moreau, he is in charge of the island. We don't know what's going on, but we see these natives who look grotesque. They don't look like a human, pretty much, because they have characteristics of animals. You can see it in their limbs, you can see it in their faces, in their hair, in the way the sounds that they make. I can't stress the word disturbing enough with this film, and even with the book. So he's on this island, he doesn't know what's going on, and that's what makes the book and actually the movie so good, is there's so much build-up. You never know what's gonna happen next. You never know if the animals, half animal, half humans, are just gonna lose it at any point in time. But so that's pretty much the plot, is this mad scientist on the island is performing inhumane experiments on animals, trying to pretty much turn advance animals and their evolution. And the result of that are these grotesque beasts. So there's a dreadful feeling during the whole film that something big is going to happen, something bad, obviously. If you haven't seen the movie yet, I suggest you come back, because I'm going to talk a little bit about the end right now. So, the last 20 minutes of this movie were insane, especially the last 10 minutes. It gets crazy. Arlen's wife, who ends up getting on the island, she is almost molested by one of these half-human, half-beast creatures. She's asleep, and this movie being a pre-code film, they could get away with a lot more things pre-code era, but this beast is attempting to get in her room while she's asleep to molest her, so that was pretty disturbing to watch. There's a quote that the beasts end up saying, and it's, "We are not man, we are not beast, we are things." So that gave me goosebumps, them saying things like that. We are just things. So they're truly lost souls. This is towards the end when they're starting to attack Charles Laughton. Charles Laughton is using a whip, trying to keep them back, and he actually really did know how to use a whip. He had been trained in it before. And when they finally get a hold of him, this is when it gets real messed up. They tie him down in the House of Pain, which is what Charles Laughton famously calls where he did experiments and torture pretty much to the animals. So they get him in the House of Pain, and they start picking up his doctor cutting utensils, surgery, whatever you want to call it, and they just start coming at him with it, and you can hear Charles Laughton screams from a distance, because they shows them attack him, and then it cuts scenes to the rest escaping from the island, but we can still hear Charles Laughton screaming in the distance. When they get off the island, they're on a ship, on a boat, and the protagonist, Richard Arlen, says, "Don't look back." And you can actually see in the distance, you can see the beast, half human creature standing on the beach watching them get away, and it's very creepy. So the results of this film, definitely ahead of its time. It was banned in the UK for quite some time. It wasn't released in the UK until 1958. Kathleen Burke, who played the Panther woman, she was pretty much always known as playing that role. So it kind of hurt her career. She didn't have a career yet, but she was always known as being the Panther woman, so her career kind of dwindled a little bit. Charles Laughton, he said he based his appearance on how his dentist looked in the film. And he also said jokingly that, or actually maybe seriously, that he never went to a zoo ever again after making this film because, well, he didn't feel right with the animals, which is pretty funny. But like I said, it was banned in the UK for a while and banned in Sweden, and the reason was because of the scenes of animal cruelty, performing experiments on live animals. So, and for pretty much being, quote, against nature. Things that I took from this film, other than it being disturbing, there's actually one scene towards the end where we get a better look at the different half human, half beasts, and the makeup that went into it is pretty remarkable and just messed up. There's like one in particular who looks half human, half pig. His face is just so gross. And there's also, we start seeing the limbs towards the end. There's one where we see one leg is human and the other is like a horse hoof or some type of hoof from an animal. And that is just, whoa, especially for back then. It's something that you would see in a Rob Zombie film. In fact, I'm surprised Rob Zombie hasn't remade this movie yet. The movie would be made again later twice. There's one with Marlon Brando and one with Burt Lancaster. But this one I definitely feel is the creepiest and right one to watch. I've seen the Marlon Brando one, and that one wasn't creepy at all, but this one was definitely disturbing. It's also very horrifying to think that the Holocaust would happen several years after this movie was made, when scientists really did perform inhumane experiments on humans and animals. So that's something to consider, but definitely see this film at Halloween time, or it's definitely worth watching. It's a horrifying, grotesque, disturbing film. So that's going to be it for this one. Keep your dog close to you tonight, or cat. Good night, guys.